I came back from my brother's funeral in Vancouver, my hands still shaking as I turned the key in my front door. The 3-hour drive from the cemetery had given me too much time to think, too much time to feel the weight of losing Robert. Before I tell you what I overheard that night and how it changed everything, I need you to understand something. Hit that subscribe button, because this story is about trust, family, and the moment I realized my own son saw me as nothing more than a bank account with a pulse. My name is Thomas Garrett, and I'm 64 years old. I spent 40 years as a hydraulic engineer in Calgary before retiring to this modest bungalow in Lethbridge, Alberta. My wife Catherine passed away 9 years ago from ovarian cancer. After she died, I threw myself into volunteering at the local community center, teaching woodworking to kids who needed somewhere to go after school. It kept me busy. It kept me from thinking about the empty house. My son, Marcus, is 37 now. He married his wife, Stephanie, 6 years ago, and they have 2 children, Emma, who's 5, and Noah, who's 3. I love those grandkids more than anything in this world. When Marcus told me he was struggling with his mortgage payments last year, I didn't hesitate. I withdrew $40,000 from my retirement savings and transferred it to him. No contract, no repayment plan. He's my son. That's what fathers do. When he called again 4 months later saying Stephanie's car had broken down and they couldn't afford the repairs, I sent another $8,000. And when Emma needed braces this past summer, I covered the $5,000 orthodontist bill. Marcus always said thank you. He always promised he'd pay me back when things got better. But things never seemed to get better. My brother Robert lived in Vancouver his entire adult life. He never married, never had children. He poured everything into his commercial real estate business, building it from a single rental property into a portfolio worth millions. We talked on the phone every Sunday without fail, even when we disagreed about politics or argued about which hockey team was better. He was my only sibling, my best friend, the person who knew me better than anyone else alive. 3 weeks ago, Robert collapsed at his office. Massive heart attack. He was 71. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. The funeral was brutal. Cold rain hammered against the chapel windows while the minister talked about Robert's generosity and business acumen. I sat in the front row, feeling every one of my 64 years pressing down on my shoulders. Marcus and Stephanie sat beside me, Marcus checking his phone every few minutes, while Stephanie kept her hands folded in her lap, face carefully neutral. After the service, Robert's lawyer, David Chen, pulled me aside. He handed me a thick manila envelope and said we needed to meet the following week to discuss Robert's estate. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. I couldn't think about business right then. I couldn't think about anything except the fact that I'd never hear Robert's voice again, never share another Sunday phone call, never hear him laugh at my terrible jokes. I drove home in a fog, barely remembering the highway miles between Vancouver and Lethbridge. It was nearly midnight when I pulled into my driveway. Marcus and Stephanie's truck was parked on the street. They'd driven separately from the funeral, said they wanted to make sure I didn't have to come home to an empty house. I appreciated that. Or at least, I thought I did. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. I could see their silhouettes moving around inside. I was so tired, emotionally and physically drained. I grabbed my overnight bag from the trunk and walked slowly up the front steps. That's when I heard their voices through the kitchen window, which was cracked open despite the November cold. I froze with my hand on the doorknob. Stephanie's voice came first, sharp and frustrated. "We need to have this conversation now, Marcus. Your uncle just died. That means your dad is about to inherit everything. Steph, come on. Can we not do this tonight? He just buried his brother." "Exactly. Which means he's vulnerable. Which means this is the perfect time to talk to him about moving in with us." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Moving in with them? We'd never discussed that. Marcus sighed. "He's not going to want to move. He loves this house. This house is too big for him," Stephanie said, and I could hear her moving around, probably pacing the way she did when she was working through a problem. 3 bedrooms, full basement, huge yard. He's 64, Marcus. How much longer is he going to be able to maintain all this? What happens when he falls and breaks a hip? What happens when he can't drive anymore? He's not that old. He will be. And when that happens, we'll be the ones dealing with it. We'll be the ones driving him to doctor's appointments, managing his medications, making sure he doesn't burn the house down because he forgot he left the stove on. Dad doesn't forget things like that. Yet, Stephanie said. He doesn't forget yet. But my grandmother was fine until she was 70. And then, boom, dementia hit like a freight train. We need to plan ahead, Marcus. We need to be smart about this. I stood frozen on my own porch, barely breathing, the cold November wind cutting through my jacket. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What are you really getting at, Steph?" "I'm getting at the fact that your Uncle Robert was worth at least $10 million, probably more. And your dad is his only living relative. That money is coming to him, Marcus. All of it. And I'll be damned if we're going to let him waste it sitting alone in this house until he dies." My vision blurred. I gripped the door handle so hard my knuckles went white. "Jesus, Steph, that's harsh." "No, it's realistic," she said. "Your dad has given us, what, $53,000 over the past year? Where do you think that came from? His pension? His savings? He's been bleeding money to support us, and meanwhile he's living like a hermit in this oversized house, eating frozen dinners and pretending he's fine. He seems happy. He seems lonely. And lonely old men make terrible decisions with their money. They get scammed by telemarketers. They donate everything to dubious charities. They marry gold diggers half their age. We've already benefited from his generosity, Marcus. Imagine what we could do if we actually managed his finances properly." "You want to manage his money?" "I want to protect him," Stephanie said, her voice softening in that way she did when she was trying to sound reasonable. "And protect our family. Emma needs speech therapy. Noah's going to need preschool soon. And we're still drowning in mortgage debt. If your dad moved in with us, we could sell this house. The Lethbridge market is hot right now. We could clear $450,000, maybe $500 if we stage it right. My house. The house Catherine and I bought 36 years ago. The house where we raised Marcus, where she died in our bedroom with me holding her hand. The house where every room held memories I wasn't ready to let go of. And Dad would just... What? Live in our spare room? For now, Stephanie said. Then later, when he needs more care, we transition him into a really nice assisted living facility. A good one, Marcus. I'm not talking about some depressing nursing home, but one of those places costs $6,000-7,000 a month. And who's going to pay for that? Us? With what money? No. We use his inheritance. We sell his house. We set him up somewhere comfortable, and we finally get our financial house in order. I don't know, Steph. This feels wrong. What feels wrong is watching you work 60-hour weeks while your dad sits on a fortune and acts like he's broke. He gave us scraps, Marcus. Scraps. When all along he had your uncle as a safety net. Robert was loaded, and your dad never mentioned it. Not once. Don't you think that's weird? Don't you think that's him hoarding resources while we struggled? Robert and Dad weren't that close about money stuff. They talked every Sunday for 40 years, Stephanie snapped. You think they never discussed finances? You think your dad didn't know exactly how rich Robert was? He knew, and he chose not to help us more, because he was selfish. Well, now Robert's gone, and that money is going to actually do some good for once. It's going to help his grandchildren. It's going to secure our future, and all your dad has to do is be reasonable about his living situation. I couldn't listen anymore. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might have a heart attack right there on the porch. Just like Robert, I backed away from the door, walked down the steps, and stood in my driveway in the freezing cold, trying to process what I'd just heard. My son, my own son, the boy I'd held in the delivery room, taught to ride a bike, paid for university, supported through his wedding and fatherhood. He was planning to institutionalize me, sell my home, and spend my inheritance. Or at least, he was allowing his wife to plan it while he offered weak protests. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough that my fingers went numb. Long enough that the kitchen light went off and I heard them moving upstairs to what used to be Marcus's childhood bedroom, where they were apparently spending the night. Eventually, I let myself in through the back door, moving quietly through the dark house. I didn't turn on any lights. I went straight to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed Catherine died in. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I just sat there in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, and made a decision. The next morning, I made breakfast like nothing had happened. Pancakes, bacon, fresh coffee. Marcus came downstairs first, looking sheepish. Hey, Dad. Sleep okay? Like the dead, I said, which was a lie. I hadn't slept at all. Stephanie appeared a few minutes later, perfectly put together despite it being 7 in the morning. She gave me a hug that felt performative. How are you holding up, Thomas? Managing, I said. Thank you both for staying over. I appreciate not coming home to an empty house. Of course, Stephanie said, sitting down at the table. That's what family does. We take care of each other. I poured her coffee and watched her thank me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We made small talk over breakfast. Marcus mentioned work, how busy his contracting business had been, how they were barely keeping up with demand but somehow never seemed to get ahead financially. Stephanie talked about the kids, how expensive everything was getting, how they were worried about saving for Emma and Noah's education. I nodded in all the right places, made sympathetic sounds, and said nothing about what I'd overheard. After they left, I sat at my kitchen table with the manila envelope David Chen had given me. My hands were steady now. I opened it carefully and pulled out the documents inside. Robert's will was straightforward. As his only living relative, I inherited everything. His investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $12.3 million. His Vancouver condo, worth roughly $900,000. His shares in 3 commercial properties in Vancouver and Toronto, generating approximately $14,000 per month in rental income, and a life insurance policy with a death benefit of $1 million. I stared at the numbers, reading them over and over. My brother had been worth nearly $15 million. But that wasn't all. There was a separate document, dated 3 months earlier. A letter from Robert, handwritten, addressed to me. Tommy, it began. Only Robert called me Tommy. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Probably the ticker finally gave out. The doctors have been warning me for years, but you know me, stubborn as always. I need to tell you something I should have mentioned years ago. 5 years ago, when Catherine died, you were in bad shape financially. The medical bills, the funeral costs, taking time off work to care for her. You never said anything, but I saw the property tax notices when I visited. You were 3 months behind, and the county was threatening foreclosure. I paid them off, $38,000. But I didn't just pay your debt, Tommy. I bought your house from the county and put it in a trust with you as the sole beneficiary. The deed is in your name, always has been, but the trust protects it from creditors, lawsuits, or anyone trying to manipulate you into selling. You own that house free and clear, no mortgage, no taxes owed. I've been paying the property taxes out of one of my investment accounts for the past 5 years. Now that I'm gone, there's enough in that account to cover your taxes for the next 30 years. I did this because I love you, because you're a better man than I ever was. You raised a good son, you loved your wife through the worst illness imaginable, and you've spent your retirement trying to help others instead of yourself. Don't let anyone take advantage of that kindness, Tommy. Not even family, especially not family. Love, Robert. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, just staring at my brother's handwriting. He'd saved me, he'd protected me, and he'd done it without ever saying a word, without ever making me feel like I owed him anything. Robert was gone, but he'd left me something more valuable than money. He'd left me dignity, security, and the means to protect myself. I called David Chen that afternoon. We met at his office in Calgary the next day. A 2-hour drive I made with the radio off, thinking the entire way. David was maybe 50, sharp-eyed, wearing an expensive suit that suggested Robert had chosen his lawyer well. He went through everything methodically. The investments would take about 6 weeks to fully transfer. The condo could be sold or kept, my choice. The commercial property shares would continue generating income monthly. Your brother was very specific about certain protections, David said, pulling out another document. He insisted on setting up an irrevocable trust for the bulk of the estate. You're the trustee and beneficiary, but the assets are protected from claims by creditors, lawsuits, or family disputes. He was very concerned about people potentially taking advantage of you. Robert was a smart man, I said quietly. He was, and he left you in an incredibly strong financial position. You're set for life, Mr. Garrett. You could live comfortably on the investment income alone and never touch the principal. I thought about Stephanie's voice in my kitchen. We could clear $450,000. Maybe 500 if we stage it right. David, I need to ask you something about estate planning. Hypothetically, If someone wanted to claim I wasn't mentally competent to manage my finances, how difficult would that be? David's expression shifted slightly. Are you concerned about someone challenging your competency? I'm concerned about being prepared, I said carefully. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Given the protections your brother put in place, it would be extremely difficult. The trust structure prevents anyone from claiming undue influence or financial exploitation. But if you're worried about family members attempting to gain conservatorship, I'd recommend we take additional steps. What kind of steps? A full cognitive assessment by a certified psychiatrist, documented and notarized. A video deposition stating your intentions clearly. Updated power of attorney documents that specify exactly who can and cannot make decisions on your behalf. And possibly moving some assets into different structures that make them inaccessible to anyone but you. Let's do all of that, I said. All of it? Every single thing you mentioned. And one more. I need to set up education trusts for my grandchildren, Emma and Noah. Trusts that their parents can't access or control. The money goes directly to tuition, books, legitimate education expenses. No one else touches it. David made notes. That's very thoughtful. It's protective, I said. I don't want my grandchildren used as leverage against me, and I don't want them to suffer because of their parents' choices. Over the next week, I did exactly what David recommended. The psychiatric evaluation was thorough and slightly humiliating, but Dr. Patricia Morrison was professional about it. She tested my memory, cognitive function, decision-making capacity, and emotional stability. At the end of 3 hours, she signed a document certifying I was of sound mind, fully capable of managing my affairs, and showed no signs of dementia, cognitive decline, or undue influence. I had that document notarized and filed with David's office. I recorded a video deposition explaining my decisions, my reasons, and my intentions. I looked directly into the camera and stated that any future claims about my mental competency should be weighed against this evidence of my current clarity. I updated my power of attorney to name David Chen, not Marcus, as my healthcare proxy and financial decision-maker if I ever became incapacitated. And I set up education trusts for Emma and Noah, each funded with $250,000, structured to pay out for university, college, or trade school expenses only. The trust documents explicitly stated that Marcus and Stephanie had no access to the funds and no decision-making power over them. Then I waited. Marcus called 3 days later. Hey, Dad. Steph and I were talking, and we want to take you out to dinner this weekend. Celebrate Uncle Robert's life properly. What do you think? That sounds nice, I said. Should I meet you somewhere? Actually, why don't you come to our place? Steph wants to cook. The kids would love to see you. Sure, I said. Saturday? Perfect. See you at 6. I arrived at their house in Calgary right on time, carrying a bottle of wine and a toy for each grandchild. Emma threw herself at my legs, chattering about kindergarten and her new friend Madison. Noah was shyer, hiding behind his mother's legs until I coaxed him out with the toy truck I'd brought. For a little while, it felt normal. Marcus grilled steaks on their back patio despite the November cold. Stephanie served roasted vegetables and garlic bread. The kids ate macaroni and cheese at their little table, giggling at something only they understood. After dinner, Stephanie suggested the kids watch a movie in the living room. She set them up with Frozen for what was probably the 1,000th time, then returned to the dining room where Marcus was pouring more wine. Dad, Marcus began, and I could hear the nervousness in his voice. We wanted to talk to you about something. Here it comes, I thought. Of course, I said. What's on your mind? Stephanie sat down, folding her hands on the table in that same pose she'd had at the funeral. Thomas, we've been thinking a lot about your situation. You're alone in that big house, and with Robert gone, you don't have family in Vancouver anymore. We worry about you. I appreciate that, I said calmly, but I'm managing fine. Are you, though? Marcus said, jumping in like he'd rehearsed this. Dad, you're 64. That house is a lot of work. The yard, the maintenance, the stairs to the basement. And you're there all by yourself. What if something happens? Like what? Like anything, Stephanie said. A fall, a medical emergency, a break-in. You're isolated out there in Lethbridge. We're 2 hours away. That's too far if something goes wrong. I have neighbors, I said. I have friends from the community center. That's not the same as family, Stephanie said gently. We think it might be time to consider other living arrangements. Arrangements where you're not so isolated. You want me to move into a care home? I said flatly. No, Marcus said quickly. Well, not immediately. We were thinking you could move in with us first. We have that spare bedroom. It's not huge, but it's comfortable. You'd be with family, with your grandkids. We could all help take care of each other. I let the silence stretch out. Emma's voice floated in from the living room, singing along to Let It Go slightly off key. And what would happen to my house? I asked. Stephanie and Marcus exchanged a glance. She gave him a small nod. Well, Marcus said, we'd probably need to sell it. I mean, there's no point leaving it empty, and the property taxes alone are brutal. The Lethbridge market is doing really well right now. We could get a good price for it. And that money would help support you, Stephanie said smoothly. Care isn't cheap, Dad. Whether you're living with us or eventually in an assisted living facility, there are costs. Medical expenses, medications, quality of life expenses. The money from the house sale would ensure you're taken care of properly. I see, I said. And what about Robert's estate? The room got very quiet. Marcus looked at Stephanie. She looked at me. We don't know what Robert left you, Stephanie said carefully. That's your private business. But obviously, if there's an inheritance, that could help too. It could help you, and it could help us continue supporting you as you age. I took a sip of wine, taking my time. You've really thought this through. We have, Marcus said, sounding relieved that I wasn't arguing. We want what's best for you, Dad. We want you safe and cared for. That's very thoughtful, I said. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and opened the voice recording app I'd had running since before dinner. I set the phone on the table between us, the red recording indicator clearly visible. What's that? Marcus asked. Insurance, I said. I want to make sure I remember this conversation accurately. Stephanie's face went pale. You've been recording us? I have. The same way I recorded the conversation you two had in my kitchen the night of Robert's funeral. The conversation where you discussed selling my house, managing my money, and putting me in an assisted living facility without my knowledge or consent. Marcus looked like I'd punched him in the stomach. Dad, Let me finish, I said, my voice calm but cold. I'm 64 years old. I'm in perfect health. I have no cognitive issues, no mobility problems, no medical conditions that prevent me from living independently. I had a full psychiatric evaluation last week that confirms I'm of sound mind and fully capable of managing my own affairs. We never said you weren't, Stephanie said, but her voice was shaking. You said I was vulnerable. You said I'd eventually forget to turn off the stove. You said I was lonely, and lonely old men make terrible decisions. You planned to manipulate me into moving in with you, sell my house without my consent, and gain control of my finances under the guise of protecting me. That's not Marcus started. That's exactly what you said. I have it recorded. And before you accuse me of paranoia or overreacting, you should know that what you planned is called financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. It's illegal. In Alberta, it can result in criminal charges. Stephanie stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We were trying to help you. You were trying to help yourselves, I said. And I understand why. I've given you $53,000 over the past year. You're drowning in debt. You're struggling. But instead of asking me for help honestly, you decided to manufacture a crisis around my competency so you could justify taking control. Marcus's eyes were wet. Dad, please. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I asked. Explain to me how planning to sell my home, the home where your mother died, the home where I've lived for 36 years, was in my best interest and not yours. He couldn't answer. He just stared at the table, shoulders shaking. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm leaving now. I'm going back to my home, which I own outright thanks to your Uncle Robert. He paid off my property taxes 5 years ago and set up a trust to protect the house from exactly this kind of situation. Robert paid your taxes? Marcus whispered. He did. Without telling me, without making me feel indebted. Because that's what family does when they actually love you. They protect you quietly. They don't scheme to exploit you the moment they smell money. I stood up, pushing my chair back carefully. As for Robert's estate, yes, I inherited it. All of it. Approximately $15 million. But you'll never see a penny of it. Stephanie actually gasped. Marcus just looked stricken. However, I continued, I've set up education trusts for Emma and Noah, $250,000 each. The money will pay for their education when the time comes. Neither of you can touch it. Neither of you can control it. It's for them, not for you. Dad, Marcus tried again. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I said. You're my son. Emma and Noah are my grandchildren. But until you can look me in the eye and give me a genuine apology, not because you want my money, but because you understand why what you did was wrong, we're going to have very limited contact. This is insane, Stephanie said. You're punishing us for trying to help you. I'm protecting myself from people who see me as an ATM with an expiration date, I said. There's a difference. I walked to the living room where Emma and Noah were still watching Frozen, oblivious to the adult drama happening in the next room. I kissed each of them on the forehead, told them I loved them, and promised I'd see them again soon. Then I drove home to Lethbridge, my hands steady on the wheel, my heart broken but my conscience clear. That was 3 months ago. It's February now. The coldest part of winter in Alberta, the season where the wind cuts through you and the sky stays gray for weeks at a time. I haven't spoken to Marcus except for 2 emails. The first was a formal apology, obviously drafted with legal consultation, admitting no wrongdoing but expressing regret for any misunderstanding. I didn't respond. The second came last week. It was shorter, more personal. Dad, I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because of the money. Because I let Steph convince me that taking care of you meant controlling you. I was wrong. I want to fix this, but I don't know how. I love you. Marcus. I haven't responded to that one yet either. I don't know if I will. Stephanie sent nothing. I didn't expect her to. I see Emma and Noah twice a month now. Marcus brings them to a park in Lethbridge, and we have supervised visits. Supervised by Marcus. At my insistence. The kids don't understand why they can't come to Grandpa's house anymore, and that breaks my heart. But I won't risk Marcus and Stephanie using them as leverage to get back into my life and finances. I sold Robert's Vancouver condo for $920,000. I donated half of that to the Canadian Cancer Society in Catherine's name and half to a local charity that helps families with medical expenses. The kind of expenses that nearly bankrupted me a decade ago. I kept Robert's commercial property shares. That $14,000 per month in rental income goes into a separate account I use for philanthropy. Last month, I anonymously paid off medical debt for 3 families in Lethbridge. This month, I'm funding a scholarship program at the community college for students studying trades. I'm teaching more woodworking classes at the community center. I've joined a hiking group for seniors. I'm learning to paint, badly, but I'm learning. I have dinner with friends twice a week. I'm not lonely. I'm not isolated. I'm not a burden. I'm 64 years old. I'm in perfect health. And I'm in complete control of my life. But here's what I want you to understand. And this is the educational part, the part I need you to hear clearly. What my son and daughter-in-law planned is called financial exploitation. It's one of the most common forms of elder abuse in Canada. According to the Canadian government, 1 in 5 older adults experiences some form of abuse, and financial exploitation is the most frequently reported type. The warning signs are often subtle. Adult children who suddenly show excessive interest in a parent's finances, relatives who isolate an older person from friends or other family members, people who suggest an older adult can't manage their own affairs, despite no medical evidence of incompetence, pressure to sign over property, change wills, or grant power of attorney. If you're an older adult and someone is pressuring you about your finances, your living situation, or your mental competency, trust your instincts. Get a second opinion. Consult with a lawyer who specializes in elder law. Get a cognitive assessment if you need to prove your competency. Document everything. And if you're an adult child worried about an aging parent, have honest conversations. Ask what they need. Offer specific, concrete help. Don't assume they're incompetent just because they're old. Don't make plans without their knowledge or consent. Respect their autonomy, even when it's hard, even when you disagree with their choices. My brother Robert taught me something important in his death. He taught me that real love is protective without being controlling. Real care respects dignity and autonomy. Real family doesn't wait for vulnerability to exploit it. I don't know if Marcus and I will ever repair our relationship. I hope we do. I love my son. I love my grandchildren. But I won't sacrifice my independence, my home, or my dignity for a relationship built on manipulation. Some people ask me if I regret listening at that window, If I wish I'd never heard that conversation. The answer is no. I regret that it happened at all. I regret that my son and his wife thought so little of me. But I don't regret knowing the truth, because the truth, however painful, gave me the power to protect myself. And at 64, living in Robert's gift of security, I finally understand what my brother was trying to tell me in that letter. Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. Not even family. Especially not family. I'm Thomas Garrett. I live in Lethbridge, Alberta, in a house I own free and clear. I have $15 million I'll probably never spend. I have 2 grandchildren I love desperately, and a son I'm waiting to forgive. And I have my dignity. No one gets to take that away from me ever again. If this story resonated with you, if you've experienced something similar, or if you're worried about an older person in your life, please share this video. Please have those difficult conversations. And please remember that getting older doesn't mean giving up control of your life. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself, protecting your independence, and understanding that family should build you up, not tear you down. I'm Thomas Garrett, and this is my story. Thank you for listening.